It's been about 3 months since I started Project Cross versus Gravel. Now it's time to wrap it up and give you my final thoughts. Before I really get started, I just want to sum up how I got into this project. First of all, I've been riding gravel roads for almost 20 years. I started on my mountain bike. Then about 5 or 6 years ago, I got a cyclocross bike. Really enjoyed riding the gravel, rolling a little bit faster than I did on a mountain bike. I raced cyclocross, then I got a gravel bike to add to my bike fleet. I liked the gravel bike, but I didn't notice too much of a difference between that and the cross bike as far as comfort. So I sold the gravel bike, then I test rode a Niner RLT9 RDO in Fort Collins, Colorado, and was really impressed by the comfort of that bike. So I purchased that bike as my next project to compare a high-end carbon gravel bike to a high-end cyclocross bike to see if there really was a difference. So for me, I'm not satisfied with just reading things on the internet. I have to figure things out on my own, test ride, do long-term switching back and forth between the bikes to really determine what the differences are. As I started getting into this project, I noticed more of a comfort difference between the two bikes than I originally thought. I never thought my giant TCX carbon cyclocross race bike was uncomfortable. The fact that it can fit some big tires, I ran 40C tires on that bike when riding gravel, and I was pretty happy with the comfort of that bike until I started riding this Niner RLT9. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail of the bike. I've done reviews on it. You can go back and watch it. In terms of riding position, I didn't notice too much of a difference. Now the bars on the cyclocross bike are a little bit lower, but you can adjust that with raising the stem up and down. So the comfort didn't really come from the riding position. Again, I felt like that was pretty similar. However, I did notice a difference in terms of the geometry. So the geometry on the gravel bike really allows you to relax a little bit more and enjoy the ride. Now, as I said in one of my reviews of the Niner RLT9, I said that that bike is just a pleasure to ride. And I said that I've never really used that term for a bike, but that's the way I describe of riding that bike on gravel roads. You can just enjoy the ride a little bit more because of how relaxed the geometry is. You're not fighting the bike to keep the bike in a straight line. Now, just like with the comfort, I never really noticed that the cross bike was uncomfortable. I also never really noticed that the cross bike was twitchy. It's just when you switch over to a gravel bike with a slacker head angle and a lower bottom bracket, that you can really notice that the bike is just more stable, and so therefore the cross bike being a little bit less stable. And where that stability really helps is confidence in descending. So really the faster that you go, the more confidence that you have on the gravel bike. And also the rougher the terrain, the more confidence you have on the gravel bike because of the lower bottom bracket and the slacker head angle. Now, part of the project I did focus on wheels, and I want to kind of give my summary on that. So I would always go with aluminum wheels for gravel riding. I don't need the precise handling of a carbon wheel set for gravel like I would for cyclocross racing. For me, the comfort of the aluminum wheels is just much more important than precise handling for long gravel rides. Now, that being said, I also want to mention what I discovered in swapping the wheels, and that is the fact that the wheels didn't make as big of a difference in terms of comfort. There is a difference. Again, aluminum wheels are more comfortable, but it's the way the frame is built on the gravel bike that is the majority of the comfort improvement. Another conclusion that I had in this project is that personally, I would always go with 2 front chain rings for a gravel bike. I love the single chain ring for my cross bike for cross racing. It makes the bike lighter. There's less to go wrong, but for gravel riding, I just love having the wider gear range and also not having a cassette in the back that has big jumps between gears. And when you have that, there's times where you're on a flat road where one gear feels like the cadence is too low and then the next gear feels like the cadence is too high. Having a cassette in the back with a tighter space, it helps you find the right gear, and you can really only do that if you have 2 front chain rings. Now, through the 3-month test, I did drop a chain one time on the Niner, and when I got home, I adjusted on the SRAM. There's a little chain guide inside that it was a little bit too far out, so I adjusted it back in. But that's just an example of why a single front chain ring is really good on a cross bike, because if you ever do that in a cross race, it could just wipe out your whole race weekend. So now for buying recommendations. For all around riding, for someone who loves riding gravel, they commute to work on the bike, they dabble in cyclocross racing, I would recommend a gravel bike. I just think it's a more versatile bike. It's more comfortable to ride. It's more enjoyable to ride on long gravel rides. Something else I want to repeat that I mentioned in one of my videos is, even though there is a difference between a cross and a gravel bike, it's not as dramatic as a cross-country race bike, mountain bike, and a trail mountain bike. There's a big difference between the way those bikes feel. You can feel a difference between a cross and a gravel, but the difference is not that dramatic. I also want to mention that the faster, the longer, and the rougher your rides, the more the difference between a cross and a gravel bike is going to be noticeable. So take that into consideration. If you're riding in the mountains where you're going fast down hills, there's rough gravel, you're doing long rides, that's when you're going to be able to take advantage of the differences of a gravel bike. So now the big question is, if I only had to choose one, which one would I choose? That's a difficult decision for me, because I race cyclocross competitively and I love doing long gravel rides. So I really take advantage of the ride characteristics of both bikes. But if I had to choose one, it would be the gravel bike. And the reason is because of the amount of time that I spend riding gravel roads versus racing cyclocross. When cyclocross season comes around in the fall, I may do 12 races. Cyclocross races are between 45 minutes and an hour. So that's 12 hours I spend per year racing a cyclocross bike and taking advantage of the ride characteristics of a cross bike. I may ride a gravel bike 12 hours in a week. So I just spend so much more time riding a gravel bike. So if I only had one, I would just get used to the little bit slower handling of a gravel bike. It's still carbon, it's still fast, it's still pretty light, it still accelerates really well. Yes, the cyclocross bike is going to be a tad faster per lap on a cyclocross race. Now, if you're winning and losing cross races by a few seconds, then yes, you're going to want a cross bike. I've been there. I've won cross races by a few seconds and I've lost cross races by a few seconds. So having that extra advantage of a cross bike is really worth it for me. And that's really why I have two bikes, because of racing cross competitively and also doing long gravel rides. Now I just want to emphasize that my viewpoint is coming from someone who does not have a road bike. I don't ride road that much at all. But if you're a road rider and you race cyclocross and you don't do a lot of long gravel rides, probably your longer rides are on a road bike, on group road rides, then if you race cross, you're probably better off choosing a cross bike over a gravel bike. So I know a lot of people may get frustrated at just all the segments of bikes that are out there. But look at it the other way. Rather than getting frustrated about that, look at how diverse cycling can be. Cycling to me is one of the most diverse sports out there. You can be a downhill racer, you can be a cyclocross racer, you can be a guy who goes out on long gravel rides on the weekend or long road rides. You might commute to work. Cycling is so diverse. Because of that diversity, we have different segments of bikes that help you take advantage of the diversity. So that's going to wrap it up for this video, and again, wrap it up for Project Cross versus Gravel. It's time for my channel to get focused a little bit more back on mountain biking, which I'm really looking forward to. So any questions or comments that you have about this video or the project, drop those below. And again, if you haven't watched some of the other videos in Project Cross versus Gravel and it's a subject that interests you, I would encourage you to go back and watch those as well. Thanks for watching.